Hello, I'm Faye Waterman, the Conversation Curator, and this is What's Your Superpower podcast. And my guest today is Dr. Chris Willems. And Dr. Chris is a professional communication consultant and coach who continues to explore and develop his extensive, uniquely diverse career in corporate communication, award-winning television and performing arts, and tertiary education. Now, Dr. Chris has a vast array of skills, wisdom, and knowledge, which we're going to learn about right now. Welcome, Dr. Chris, and thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Faye. Good to be with you.
Now, Dr. Chris, we're going to look at your superpowers, but we're going to do that in a way through conversation, talk about where you've come from, your experiences that you've had, your aha moments of the things that you've created that are your superpowers that you now share with people to teach them the skills to be able to pursue and give them confidence to be able to pursue in life themselves. So share a little bit about who you are, please, Dr. Chris.
Well, my background's Dutch. I was born in a small place in Queensland called Pittsworth near Toowoomba. And I think I was the accident that happened after my parents arrived in Australia after the war. But I've grown up mostly in and around Brisbane most of my life, other than a couple of years overseas. I started off, my professional life started off in consulting engineering. My parents decided I was going to be an engineering draftsman because, as they said, draftsmen are never out of work. And so I did that, but trouble is the first job I got, I was made redundant because there was a downturn. So much for the draftsmen never out of work. So anyway, I kept pursuing that and did it. But parallel with that, I was doing music. I was a musician, and gradually that took over the consulting engineering, and music eventually got me involved in theatre, which I didn't know existed at the time. But someone volunteered me to play drums for a theatre production. So I thought, oh, okay. So I did that and kind of got hooked on the whole theatre thing. And that eventually took me to London to just out of curiosity, the whole art scene, in London. I ended up studying mime and design for television. I was strange combination, but I those two things were available at the time, and I was interested. In fact, a friend from Brisbane, she was over there already, and she was studying mime, and she said, "Oh, Chris, you should try doing mime. You kind of got the body for it." I had a slightly different body then, and so I did, and I really I was drawn to it. I really enjoyed it. I seemed to have an aptitude for it, so I did it. So I was studying mime and design for television in London. In fact, Peter Lilly, her name is, and she appears in a couple of quite famous video clips. One of them being "Video Killed a Radio Star." She gets flown across the studio, and also Ultravox's Vienna. She's the woman who appears in those video clips, and there are others as well. Anyway, so I did that, and I ended up through my design course, I ended up getting a job at the BBC, like a once in a lifetime chance to work for the BBC in the design department. So I did that. And eventually came back to Australia, and I've been doing mime and television design ever since. I always say I left Australia as a drummer and a draftsman, and I came back as a mime artist and a television designer. Bit of a leap in 2 years. So I've been doing those things ever since, and doing them, creating solo mime shows and touring them fairly extensively, and also doing design, both television and theatre. I've done work for the BBC, Channel 9, and various other independent productions. And one of my solo stage shows was called Son of Romeo. It was a solo version of Romeo and Juliet, done in the style of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. So it was a comedy version of Romeo and Juliet, and I play all the parts, including Romeo, Juliet, all the main characters, plus a cast of thousands and a small dog. You can do that in mime because what you're utilizing is the audience's imagination. So as long as you take them with you on that journey, they happily work really hard, not realizing they're working so hard imaginatively. Because that show was based very largely on Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner cartoons, I hit on the idea of, and it was very successful in terms of touring and stuff, I hit on the idea of turning it back into a television cartoon. And so I pursued getting the funding to do that. But when you walk into a TV executive's office and you say, "Oh, I want to do Romeo and Juliet," I want, what's investment? I want to do Romeo and Juliet. They're already showing you the door. I want to do it with no words, and they're kind of going a bit berserk. Then I want to do it like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and they can vaguely relate to that. And I want to do it on my own, i.e., play all the parts. And I want $500,000 of your money to do it. So hence it took kind of 4 years to get the money, and then 1 year to make it. But eventually, obviously, I got the money, and in sort of 1989, 90, $500,000 for a one-off television special was unheard of. But because I'd worked in television design and in mime, and my mime teacher always said, "You can't do mime on television; this doesn't work." But I, consciously or otherwise, I decided to prove him wrong. And because I'd used, I'd worked with the BBC and done design stuff, I knew I kind of had a vague idea of how I could put those two things together using blue screen, same as green screen, different color. At the time, that technology was sort of used, for weather presenters and stuff, but not in the way that I wanted to use it. To have several of me on screen at the same time, so I could interact, the characters could interact with each other. So that's effectively what happened. So I created the show with me playing these live characters, cartoony live characters, but with painted backgrounds. And a wonderful artist by the name of Nick Stathopoulos painted all of the backgrounds, and they were just stunningly beautiful. And so combining all that, anyway, I eventually got that made and won a few awards, got broadcast in a few countries around the world. And that was really a significant milestone and achievement, career achievement, because I proved to myself and my mime teacher and everyone else that you could actually do that. And it was, and it was entertaining and people liked it. And so.
Okay. Now I want to stop you there because I want to take you back. The miming side of things, what was the interest in the miming? What sort of skills do you have to be a mime artist? And how do you pursue a career miming things? I mean, you do see, and I've seen professional mimers, but there is a real skill in it.
Absolutely. What it gives you, and I'm a great believer that actors should all study mime, excuse me, because it gives you a remarkable self-awareness and detail and subtlety in terms of how you use your body. Because I always say, and I've demonstrated this the other day when I was running a workshop, stillness is much more powerful than movement. So the less you do, the more powerful it is. And that's why you never let a mime artist start talking. You can't shut them up because they talk too much and they move too much. But when you're performing, you're so selective about the tiniest detail of what people can see of your body, and you need to make them look at you. You need to make them look at a particular part of your body. Like if I were to walk on stage and want the audience to look at my right earlobe, for instance, there's no point sort of waving your arms around and just touching your earlobe, and it's meaningless. But so what you have to do is just stop. Absolute stillness, and then, and I know that 400 people are looking at my right earlobe because I've stopped everything, and the only thing that's moving is that, and so everyone's focused on that. So that's the kind of detail, and then that's just a kind of a strange example, but the detail and the subtlety of human movement is extraordinary. I mean, we all read body language.
Oh, yes.
Otherwise, we all read body language. Some people say, "Oh, yeah, you've got to be an expert in body." No, you don't. We all do. I refuse to believe that 100 years of technology have nullified 1,000,000 years of evolution. We are an animal species that reads each other through nonverbal communication.
And it could be quite subtle how people are reading other people. Some people have a sense of they get a feeling about someone, or the way they move, or the expression on their face, or you can tell when someone's happy, sad, telling the truth, telling a lie. Not all the time, but a lot of the time you can be pretty intuitive with body language.
Yes, indeed. And you use the word sense. You get a sense of, and that's absolutely right. You get a sense of. it may not be a conscious thing, or their their eyes are darting or whatever, but we just get a sense. You walk into a room and you get a sense of who to approach, who not to approach, who's approachable, who's not. And we all do that all the time. I happen to have made a career out of it. So in terms of that career, I mean, it's really stupid making a career out of mine, because it doesn't have a huge audience.
But
But
why is it stupid? Because there are so many skills within that mime area that you can teach to people to become better presenters, better speakers, better actors. There are skills within that, your superpowers that you can teach to others to increase their awareness of who they are and their body and
absolutely,
how they move it, how they use their voice, their tonality, their facial expressions,
absolutely, yeah.
all sorts of things. So there's a real skill in it. So that's a superpower for you to be able to utilize that to teach others.
Indeed, it's become a superpower, but at the time you do it because you like it and it works, and you tend to I happen to be quite good at it, apparently. But I just loved exploring the subtlety and detail of it. I mean, with Son of Romeo, both on stage and on screen, I do the entire balcony scene of Romeo and Juliet just with two hands in a spotlight, and the expression that you can create with just two hands and how they interact can be stunningly beautiful. But when I'm coaching presenters, I'm able to show them that, and the other extreme is, well, your hands are a giveaway. Like, this looks reasonably relaxed if you're a presenter, but when you're nervous, it squeezes all the blood out of your knuckles. I call it white knuckling, because it looks relaxed, but in fact we can tell that because there's so much tension there that
I want to ask you, and you see presenters, they're sitting around if they're on television and they're sitting around, if they're well versed and they've been there for years, they don't do it. But when they're learners and they're beginners and they sit there and they've got their hands clasped and they're all sitting sort of around in a like a banana shape, I suppose, and you can tell that they're reading off a teleprompter, and you can, everyone's sort of waiting for their turn to speak and all this sort of stuff. I really notice that now.
Well, that's good, because it's good to be that aware that and I call it, there's awareness, which means you're aware of something. There's active awareness, which means you're aware of something and you do something about it. So, for instance, you mentioned auto cues and teleprompters. The great skill in using an auto cue is that you're reading it, but you don't look like you're reading. You look like you're having a conversation. And newsreaders who've been doing it for 20 years are really, really good at that. And make conversation. We kind of know they're reading it because they can't possibly remember all that stuff without tripping. And even with an auto cue, sometimes they have a bit of a trip. But and one of the things I teach people is how to read auto cues, teleprompters, with that sort of ease of conversation feel to it. Again, that's a very, very subtle thing. It's you can't have your eyes kind of reading like that, because that's a dead giveaway. So it's a case of maybe, well, if you're reading an auto cue, it's word for word, but you might have a dot pointed script where you don't read an auto cue, but because you know your subject so well, you can have 3 dot points and just talk around those dot points very conversationally. And often that's more preferable to reading an auto cue. Sometimes you have no choice, just because you've got a lot of technical information or just slabs of text that you have to get across. But the more human we can make this kind of interaction on screen, the more crucial it is. There's a quote I use a lot, and I can't quote it exactly, but what it says is, the more we use technology, the more crucial it is that we build human relationships in business. That's the context, but also personally. I've yet to meet the person who enjoys talking to a bot, I have to say.
Oh, who wants to talk to a bot?
Well, exactly, but business seems to go, oh, we'll have bots, because they'll answer all the questions. Actually, no, they don't answer the questions, and I just don't bother with. I want to talk to a human being. If it's a choice between training the algorithm or having a conversation with a real person, I'll go for the real person every time, even though we have just demanding that we train the algorithm, whatever that means.
No, I would go for the real person every time, and I think you know, the more I become aware of watching people when they're doing things, particularly on television and stuff like that, you see things and you pick up things that you would never normally pick up.
Absolutely.
And it's really interesting. And you see the ones that are really experienced in being on TV, and then you
Mm,
see the ones that come in and they're a little bit hesitant and all this sort of stuff. And you watch them grow, which is really nice.
mm.
But then you see some people, they present and they're just reading, and there's the script and you've got to follow it to the nth degree. And I'm thinking, just let loose. Let's have some fun. Make a blooper. Show you're human. You
Yeah,
know,
indeed.
stop. I just want to shake them and say, stop.
Mm,
Just enjoy it.
yeah.
Have the conversation, because that's what people enjoy, not this darkness of reading and making it go precisely how you want it to go. We all want it to go reasonably well or well, but you know, if you make a blooper, so what?
Yeah.
It shows you're
Well,
human.
indeed. Well, it depends on the content and the context. I mean, if you're reading something at a funeral that's being broadcast,
Oh, yes.
then that's a
Right.
different matter altogether. But
Totally.
if you're having like by definition, what you do is a conversation and
Yeah.
multiple conversations. So that's fantastic, because even through this dehumanizing medium of the screen, you can have a conversation because we're not scripting it. We're
Yeah.
having a conversation. And so it's an interactive thing. Too often television and video is not interactive. It's one way. It's I'm telling you this because I'm on screen, and you have to listen. So the more interactive we can make it, the more alive it becomes and the more human it becomes. And that's why I've grave concerns about AI for a whole stack of reasons. But we're losing the humanness of our interactions, and ultimately we pay the price, basically.
I think that people have to realize there is a place for AI,
Mm,
but we have to realize too that we have to maintain the human component of life. And
mm,
you cannot, I mean, you know, people are doubling up as themselves and they're putting their voice on and people are listening to it, and you watch it and it's terrible
yeah,
because you know it's not them. I
indeed.
think you have to be natural, and you've just, when you were talking there, you gave me an idea of the interaction instead of that one person talking to a screen and
Mm,
telling people what to do and things like that. It's about that interaction. Even if you can't see that person who's talking can have that interaction
abs-
regardless.
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. And trying to maintain that humanness of that interaction is can be quite challenging on screen, because
Yeah.
I mean, we're using Zoom now. We've been using Zoom for a few years now because of COVID, and as a species, we actually haven't gotten much better at it, because we forget, eye contact is a fundamental it's probably the most fundamental human interaction. What's the word? I can't think of the word. I'm a mime artist. But when we're on Zoom, we think we're making eye contact because I'm looking at you now and I can see you now. And if there were other people, I'd be looking at the screen and seeing them as well. So I think I'm making eye contact. In fact, I'm not. From your point of view, I'm not, because
No,
I'm
you're
not.
not.
No, because now I need to lift my gaze to the lens, where
That's
now,
better.
from your point of view, I'm making eye contact. From my point of view, I'm not, because I can only see you peripherally on screen. So that's a bit tricky to get your head around. And things like Zoom, we've been using them, using Zoom and other platforms for several years, and we need to remind ourselves that it's not just a convenient way of having a meeting, which it is, but it's not just that. It is, in fact, the opportunity for, if you like, a micro marketing opportunity, in that what we see in this frame, even the matchbox size frames when there's 20 people, um, people are watching us.
Yep.
People are looking at that frame and going, and so typically things like, there's an example I use of Boris Johnson and his cabinet doing a Zoom session. This came out in like 2020. I was on the front page of a newspaper. And I use it as an example of what not to do. And people like that have legions of media advisors to make sure that the image is all right. It's terrible. And I'm delighted to say it's terrible because it's given me a fantastic example of what not to do for the most part. Some of them are okay, but it's like, 30, 40 people, I don't know. And you can just circle, too much headroom. The lighting's bad. The background's too busy. All kinds of things are great examples of what not to do. And yet, so if you're using Zoom badly at the moment, don't give yourself too hard a time, because if the British cabinet can't get it right, then then you're kind of okay. But at least think about it, about how best to utilise that micro marketing opportunity in that frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a very complex thing, and my philosophy of using technology for this kind of context and the videos that I make and when I coach people is to use only as much technology as you need to.
Yeah.
Don't be seduced by the shiny
The
objects.
fancy stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you refer to shiny objects because the AI is the latest shiny object. So we've got to have that. We've got to have AI. Well, no, you don't actually. What you need is to have a human being talking to another human being on a screen, and all you need is a camera, a microphone, and a bit of light,
Yeah.
and something to say. So,
Yes. Yes.
well, it's yeah. I watch television. I increasingly watch less of it, and I sit there and I go, haven't they learned nothing in 60 years of television? Because you get occasionally reporters who should know better wearing really fine stripes, and that starts to strobe, and you go,
Yeah.
well, why didn't someone tell them that? Or they should know that in their
Yeah.
training. And
Mm,
that's really distracting and disturbing.
mm.
And just little things like that, and you go, oh, for God's sake, just look at what the rules used to be. They probably still apply, even with all the technology. The cameras haven't
Well,
got much better.
yeah, with stripes and checks and things like that, you
Mm.
avoid those on
Of course
camera.
you do. Well, you should, and a lot of people don't. I mean,
No, because they've never been told.
no, but if someone's being interviewed, that's fine because they don't know about the technical stuff of television. But the reporter interviewing them should know better, or should have been told, and should have been trained better. So,
Mm.
and I just find that it's becoming, I don't know, it's becoming cheap
Nasty.
and didn't want to say that, but yes, and that's why things like this
Said it
and what
for
you're
you.
doing is so great, because it brings us back to the human interaction.
And
But
I think that that human interaction, that conversation has been lost. And I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they said the same thing. Conversation's gone.
mm,
It's lost in the mix of the not necessarily AI, but technology itself, because of the younger generation that are coming up. They know no different. They just communicate through technology,
yeah,
whereas us who have been brought up in a generation where we didn't have iPhones or
mm,
anything like that. And I think conversation is a really important part of who we are. And if we lose that communication by bots and by, avataring yourself and your voice and everything like that, what's going to happen to us? There's a place for AI
yeah,
and there's a place not for AI. And I think that when you're working and you're doing your social media and doing that sort of thing, people want to see the humanness. They
mm,
want to see the human. They want to
absolutely.
see you. They want to get to know you. They don't want to know, they don't want to talk to a bot, and they don't want to talk to someone who's pretending to be you.
That's right. And the great irony about social media, I've been calling it anti-social media for a long time, and I noted that on a headline this morning on television. But yes, the younger generation or generations have been brought up with this, and yes, they're very articulate on these devices. But the research tells us that they've never been lonelier. The
Yeah.
research confirms that the people have never been lonelier, and that's really sad because they're
It's,
losing the skill of interaction.
yeah.
They
Hence,
might be able to interact with a thousand people, but they don't, not a one-to-one.
yeah, mental health issues.
Mm,
Hence that, it,
absolutely.
yeah, it's lost. But let's get back to you, Dr. Chris, and let's talk about the skills that you have that then now, you've learned all these skills over the years. And I find the miming is a really important part of who you are and how you can teach people, because of the awareness that you have of the body and how it can move, how it needs to move, and people being aware of that. Because we are having a conversation here, we're sitting, you know, we might be moving forward and backwards and doing those sorts of things. Is that appropriate? I find it natural. Just do the do. But when you're relaying a message, or you're standing on stage, or you're being filmed, what is it that people need to be really aware of
As presenters, you mean, or as audience?
as presenters?
Presenters. I talk a lot about taking command of the space, and there's multiple spaces. There's the space inside your head, meaning confidence and knowing who you are as a presenter. Well, I talk a lot about, when I coach people, I talk a lot about taking command of the space, and there are a number of spaces of which one needs to take command. One is the internal head space, in terms of confidence and awareness and active awareness. So there's that. The next is the taking command of the physical space. If you're on stage, you need to know how many steps it is from this position to that one over there, and that one. Where's the whiteboard? Where's the screen? Excuse me. So being aware and taking command of that physical space. And finally, there's the virtual space where we are now. And it's a similar kind of awareness, but it's a particular kind of awareness that we need to apply to this particular context. I mean, we were just talking about lenses and waving your hands around and stuff. And I mean, I know this is not all going to be on screen, but something to be aware of in this context is the lenses that these devices use, that we use because they're in our devices, are wide angle lenses. So one of the functions of a wide angle lens is it throws the background way back and it pulls the foreground way forward. So if I were to lean back just like less than half a meter, I look like I've gone back 6 feet. 3 meters, 2 meters.
I can't go back any further than that.
But similarly, if I bring my pen forward, it's massive. It's like a telegraph pole. So that's a function of a wide angle lens. The reason that wide angle lenses generally is because that keeps everything in focus. Okay, so you can move around and you're still more or less in focus. But the danger, I have a slide I use of a certain very prominent person doing an interview, and it was a long interview, and he is in the foreground, he's out of focus, and the background's got this beautiful Indigenous artwork hanging on the wall. So the camera's gone, oh, that's a straight line, I'll focus on that. So he's a highly qualified, highly paid individual who's out of focus in the foreground, and the background looks great because it's got beautiful Indigenous artworks. So that's a slide I use a lot to illustrate the danger of what the background can do. So I always encourage people to have a background that's slightly out of focus. I mean, the background behind me now is slightly out of focus. I've deliberately done that because it helps to sculpt the person in the foreground.
Yeah.
So
you have a lot of clarity there.
Well, indeed, yeah, thank you.
I sink a bit into mine.
Well, yeah, and well, they have conscious choices we have to make, So it's a case of it's active awareness. I call active awareness. So yes, on stage, what's in the background doesn't really matter that much. Yeah, it's obviously neat and tidy and got some bunch of flowers or whatever. But on camera, on screen, we need to be super aware of what's behind us and around us. I mean, a lot of people have palm trees growing out of their heads or whatever. And so just the lack of awareness of, so I always say you've got to think a bit like a designer when you're doing a piece to camera or doing a Zoom. So have you got things sticking out of your head that you're not aware of? Or is the cat walking past? Like when we first started using Zoom, that used to happen a lot. The cats and the people who have cats forget that while they're smooching the cat's face, we're seeing the other end of the cat on camera. And so, but I haven't seen too many cat bottoms for a while.
God, I hope not.
But the more we've used it, we use Zoom and platforms like it, we've become quite quite slack in terms of, well, some of us have, some people are very corporate about it and put things on the screen, like the name of their business, etc. And that's great because it reminds us of who you are and what the context is,
Mhm.
But no. So in terms of being a mime artist, the extraordinary self-awareness that brings is kind of not dissipated. It's applied to the corporate sector. In fact, a third of my doctorate was about that, about applying the mime performance skills to the corporate communication context. So I've got an academic qualification, if that's worth anything in Australia, as well as my life's tended to be back to front. I do the work and then get the qualification, rather than get the qualification then do the work. There's no course
Wrong
I
with that.
know of. There's no university course I know of that teaches you about how to be a mime artist and how to turn that into corporate communication. So I've sort of created my own. But it's
That's a skill. That's a superpower.
absolutely, yeah. So if people want to enhance their awareness and become, as I say, get comfortable, confident, and credible on camera, or indeed on stage, then that's what I do. It's work I love to do, because there's an immediate benefit, and you can see that. It's fantastic. I almost feel guilty taking money for it, because the
Why?
gratification,
Why?
the gratification in seeing someone make that leap is fantastic. It's just so gratifying. You go, now
Yeah.
you've got, yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? You've spent years learning those skills, developing them, creating them, using them in ways that help other people.
Mm,
You see that gratification, but why shouldn't you be paid for that? Because they're skills that you've learned over many years
mm.
that you offer to others.
Absolutely.
And they need to, they always say, if you pay nothing, you don't appreciate it. If you pay for it, you appreciate it more. And I think, a superpower is to actually sit back and look at who you are, the skills you have, and the skills that, and the wisdom and the knowledge and everything like that you've developed over the years, is to be recognized by you first and foremost, to have an appreciation for what you then can do for others. You've paid your dues. Now it's time for you to be paid to
Mm.
do that for others.
That's a very nice way of putting it, Faye. Thank you for that. It's good to be reminded of that from time to time, and you've put it beautifully. I mean, having a background in the arts, like my background in the arts goes for 50 years or so. I'm really old. But
Older and
we get,
wiser.
well, hopefully, but we get so, as artists, and it still happens, we get so used to the expectation of others that we will do it for nothing because we love it. And that's exploited every day with artists.
And
And
it needs not be, I think,
absolutely, yeah,
to have
uh,
value.
yeah.
People have to learn to value your wisdom, your skills, and your expertise.
Indeed. And during COVID, I recall, that's just reminded me. I can't think of her name. She's a wonderful Australian singer. She did a number on television saying, well, because the politicians wanted artists to do free concerts to whatever, and she said, Tina Arena it was, and she
Oh, I
said, well,
was going to say that.
this stops now, because yes, you want us to do stuff for nothing, but when it comes to supporting artists, you give us nothing. You don't support us, but you want our support for your political whatevers. So and good on her. I thought that was fantastic, because most of the time artists don't do that, but she was someone of a profile that could do that and did do that and should have done it, and she did, and it was fantastic. And I should have recorded it. I'm sure it's recorded
Do you know
somewhere.
what? She had a podcast all the way through COVID, and she used to talk to different people
Right.
and express herself, and it was done beautifully.
That's
Yeah.
great.
And
Yeah.
she'd call the bullshit when it was bullshit and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. And I think we all need to have a little bit of that. And
Yes.
take note of that, because she was looking at the years and years of the skills that she developed as an artist
Mm.
and needs to be paid for it to live,
Yeah.
you know, and then they expect you to do it for nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry, they wouldn't do what they're doing for nothing, the
No.
politicians.
Well, indeed, and in fact, when COVID hit, and because I was still involved in the arts at the time, and still am, I predicted. I thought, well, what's going to happen is the arts administrators. I became famous briefly for talking about arts administrators. The arts administrators will sack all the artists, but they will keep their own subsidised jobs, and so it came to pass. That's exactly what happened. They sacked all the artists instantly, and they had no income, and yet the administrators who had no one to administer kept all their jobs and got subsidised, and you know, that for me, that was the symptom, the biggest demonstration of the symptomatic nature of artists being treated badly by arts administrators.
And
Yeah,
that was, I'll bring another point up then.
yeah, sure.
When AI came out and they were developing the avatars for you know, movies and things like this, you know, you can take a real human out and put someone else in and pretend it's the same person and all that sort of stuff. And they went on strike
Yeah.
for their livelihood.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because as you say, it's a skill they've invested lots of years and money and their lives in
Yes.
to become that artist. And yeah, there are all sorts of levels of artists who, you know, community artists, opera singers, you know, the whole range.
Yeah.
And each one of those is as legitimate as the other. Absolutely. And because it's all contextual. You know, some people, I remember years ago I was involved in arts funding, and people would say, "Oh, you're a community artist," you know, as if that's worthless. In fact,
Oh,
it's worth more in many ways than the elitist opera singer. Or yeah, nothing. I've got nothing against opera singers; they're fantastically talented, but the mentality was, "Oh, you're just a community artist, so you don't need to be paid. You're just having fun with the community." Like, no, get stuff. This is a job. This is a real job, and I'm adding value to that community, huge value to the community.
and the value that they're adding to that community is giving them entertainment. It's taking them out of their real life for a period of time, particularly if they've got stress or challenges in their life, and they're taking them out of that context into something where they laugh and they feel good for a period of time, and then they go back to their real life. There's value in every artist, regardless of what they do, because they may even save someone's life.
Absolutely. Well, it's not only just you know, taking them out of their daily routine for an hour or whatever, but the community artists involve the community in creating the art a lot of the time, and that's of enormous benefit. You know, the mental health benefits of the arts generally, not just in community arts, but generally, the arts are our cultural R&D. You know, it defines who we are, and if you know, Australia doesn't have a real flash reputation for valuing its culture.
No.
So, you know, unlike, you know, European nations or wherever, we're always a bit suspicious of arty wankers, like we're suspicious of academic wankers. I happen to be both. But
I love it.
applying, you know, whether you apply those skills to you know, the corporate sector, which I'm very happy to do, but for me, there's a level of art in that. I haven't jettisoned my arts career. I mean, this morning I was playing music again, you know, just because I haven't for a while. I thought, oh, I'll try and remember that song. So it never leaves you. It's a vocation. However you adapt it and apply it to different contexts, it's not a job. It's a vocation. And if you didn't, it's like oxygen. If you didn't do art, you would die. And that's, most artists are like that. So it's and I'm yeah, we're all adaptable creatures, and artists probably more than most. And so by adapting artistic skills to you know, the accountants and lawyers and engineers, those kinds of contexts, I love that because it helps them. It gives them a license in a sense, gives them a license to kind of try something that they wouldn't have thought of necessarily until you you turned up and said, well, why don't you try that? Have a go at this. So it's quite liberating, just injecting that little bit of creativity and art into the corporate world. I mean, one of the things I talk about a lot is stylization, and I have this trademark thing called the stylized version of you, and explaining that. At the end of it, I say, well, the business world doesn't necessarily use the term stylization a lot. The arts world does. It's a very common term in the arts, but it's not so common in business. So I illustrate, I say, well, we use stylization in business all the time. We're just not aware of it. And I have a slide with just business names, just names in black and white plain text. And then you go, well, there's some very common business names, international business names. And you go, oh, yeah. And then the next slide has the logos superimposed over the top of them. And a logo is a stylized business name. So we recognize, and in fact, some of them are so stylized that they don't even have the name of the company in, like Shell or Woolworths, Apple, Fresh Food People. Sorry to be
Because they know them. Yeah,
we know them.
that's their profile, it's their branding,
Absolutely,
that's
it's
their
their brand.
style.
Yeah.
And people are recognized by that branding, or an organization or a big company.
Yeah.
And we as business owners really don't think about it in that context, which is
Not enough.
really important.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
people think they've got to have this logo and they've got to do this and they've got to do that. But it's got to be in context of who they are and what they do,
Absolutely.
so that it stands out from the crowd.
Mm. Well, that's when I put up the slide with the logos, people just instantly recognize them, and they recognize the names in the previous slide, but you instantly recognize the images, and that's a highly stylized business name, and we don't even think about that. We just see them. Oh yeah, that's Woolies, or it's Shell, or NBN or BMW or whatever, and so stylization is used in the business world all of the time.
Yeah,
all of the time.
absolutely. That's a good point. I've never thought about it like that. You're showing me, I mean, the skills that you have are just coming out in the conversation of creating awareness. Awareness is a really big thing, and this is what you do for people. You create an awareness of certain things within an organization, within their team, within individuals. There's an awareness that you create with them that is, you can start with a style, you can go through the movement of body language, you can go through the tonality of speech, the language that we use, the way we stand, the way we perceive things, all those sorts of things. You, in some context, teach people.
Absolutely, and context is the magic word, because it all comes down to however little or a lot your one stylizes oneself. Because I talk about the stylized version of you. I've never subscribed to the fake it till you make it philosophy. There's something inauthentic. No, but when you stylize, it's content and context. A conversation with a professional colleague in a coffee shop is different from doing a formal conference presentation about the same stuff, same content, but you approach it very differently. So there's a degree of performance, and there's a heightened degree of awareness, because you have to prepare lots, you have to do slides, you have to rehearse. Whereas you're having a coffee shop conversation. What'd you do on the weekend? Oh, yeah, went to the footy, took the kids to the footy, blah, blah, blah. It's mixed in with you, with the you-ness of who you are, that wakes up in the morning. But the other end of that continuum is highly stylized, and doing a video shoot, even for Zoom, is a highly quite stylized version of us, because we have to be so much more aware. What's in the background? How's my hair? Those kinds of things. But just what distance from the camera? What size shot is it? Have I got too much headroom? That's the distance between the top of the head and the top of the frame. We have to think consciously about those things. Where in a coffee shop conversation, we don't give it a thought. Don't give it a second thought. We're just having a conversation about work and family and whatever. So the degree of stylization is determined by two things: the content of what you're saying and the context in which you're saying it. So it's And that requires different degrees of active awareness, what I call active awareness. So it's we kind of believe that, oh yeah, the message is important, the information is important. Yes, it absolutely is. However, how that information is delivered, packaged and delivered, that's more important. The figures about presenting on stage or communication generally, that research tells us that 55% is body language, nonverbal. 38% is how you sound, the tone of your voice, and which leaves a miserable 7% in terms of the words that you say. So if those three things aren't working together, if they're incongruent, no one's going to take a blind bit of notice of you, your business, or your message. On screen, even if you assume the words are still worth 7%, that's arguable, but for the purpose of the exercise, let's assume that. You as a presenter are really important. I know you are in the live context as well, because without you, there is no presentation. But what you share the frame with, and that's what we've been talking about. You in the frame, for a start, your amplified, magnified micro expressions become massively more important. But what you share that frame with, what's behind you, what's around you, becomes hugely important on camera, on screen, because it can tell us, it can show us the story before we even start to tell the story. It gives us an instant context. So, I happen to have a nighttime cityscape background behind me at the moment. And for me, that sends the message, it's corporate world and it's city, instantly, like you don't even think about it. You might have a beach, you might have a sunset. Who knows? Whatever your story is, you need to reinforce it, you need to underpin it and support it with the visuals that you use behind you and around you. And then you can say less. You can say far less.
This is actually really exciting to talk about this and create the awareness for people that are going to be listening to this conversation, because what you're saying and what I'm going to be doing eventually is being very aware of how I use what I'm using.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so those people who are working in the corporate sector, they're working in television, they're working wherever they're working, they're running a business and they're recording themselves. There's a way of recording yourself that will come across. If you're sitting there and you're just talking about what you do, boring as batshit. That's what it is. Boring as batshit. And I always believe that there's got to be a conversation around what you do. So there's kind of seems like an interaction, and you're not just sitting there looking at the camera or that little light or whatever it is saying, oh, and maybe reading the teleprompter. And saying I do this and da, 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 da. You just bring so much to the mind to think about. There's so many things going around in my mind now.
Absolutely.
What would it be like for someone else who doesn't do what I do anyway? My backgrounds change. They vary depending.
Yep.
They're never perfect. But you know what? It's me.
Yeah. And it's got to be you.
And it's me.
Now I come back to the point, by definition, the word conversation is you converse with someone, and that's a two-way thing.
That's right.
So it's not, otherwise it's a lecture. And you don't do lectures, Faye.
No, I don't.
You curate conversations, and you help your guests to comfortably reveal things, discuss things that they may or may not even be aware of.
Yes.
But you brought it out, and you're like, oh yeah, well I did that X, Y, Z. And it reminds them of that part of their lives or their professional lives that might have been taken for granted because they've done it. It's very easy to assume knowledge on behalf of other people, but sometimes those details are really fascinating. And so, and for other people to hear what those details are, well, how did you get to, you started there, you got to hear, how did that happen? What was that journey? I always say no experience is ever wasted. Everything you do informs everything else that you do. Everything you do adds quality, depth, richness, and texture to everything that you do, irrespective of the field of professional practice. And everything you do teaches you something, and everything you learn is useful, not just for yourself, but for also for teaching, coaching, or mentoring other people. So everything, no experience is ever wasted.
No.
So you can always apply it to something.
Yeah, this is exciting. It's you know, I see so many other opportunities in conversation.
Mm.
From having this conversation with you, I see you've created another awareness, another level of awareness with me to see a greater opportunity.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And this is why, I mean, that's a superpower that you have. It's all in what you do and how you do it. But through conversation, I learned so much about people.
Mm. Mm.
But I also learned so much about me and how I do things and how I can improve things.
One of your great skills is to have a conversation, because a lot of people can't. A lot of
Yeah.
people either never had or have lost the ability to have a real conversation, and because too many people, particularly on television, it's all about me. When in fact, yeah, if they're a reporter or an interviewer, it's not about them. It's about the
No, it's
person
not.
that they're talking to or interviewing. The narcissistic tendency of quite a few television presenters actually is fairly unattractive and it's not relevant. You know, we don't care. We don't care about your opinion of the news. Just tell me what the news is. I'll form my own opinion. Thank you very much. I don't need confected outrage in the reading of the news. Yeah, what I want is the facts so I can make an informed, intelligent decision about what I'm
That's
seeing.
so true. I am when I listen or watch something from now on, I am just going to look at it in another perspective again, because I continue to learn how to do things better. You know, I have conversations. That's what I do. And I love to have conversations. I do not interview anyone. People call it interviews, but I don't interview anyone. It is simply a conversation.
Mm.
And out of that conversation can come so much value from both sides.
Absolutely.
And it's that authenticity, it's that being original, it's being aware, it's creating that awareness and making people or getting people to become aware of who they are and the possibilities, and giving them the hope to
Yeah.
be able to do whatever they choose to do.
Absolutely. And giving them the license to A, talk about it, and B, realize that they have that hope is there, and they have all these skills or knowledge that they kind of took for granted or didn't really apply to anything, or not consciously anyway. So again, yeah, it's a great skill. One of the best interviewers, and unfortunately he hasn't been on television for years, is Andrew Denton.
Oh, he was brilliant.
Remarkably skilled interview, and
Yeah.
I think I wrote somewhere, it was for goodness sake, someone with Andrew Denton's phone number, ring him up and get him back into a TV studio interviewing people, because he's just so skilled at doing that, and in a very personable way, and you know, he might have a list of questions, but he'll absolutely go off topic, off the list of questions, and have that conversation. It's like you having a conversation,
Oh, I'd
and
love
so
to have a conversation with him. I've
oh
just
yeah.
written his name down.
Well, when you get his phone number, let me know, and I'll encourage him to get back on television.
I'll just
Because
tell him.
what's the sorry?
I said, I'll just tell him.
Will do. Yeah,
Or maybe he can come on my show.
absolutely. Why not? Why not?
We could do a gig together.
A double act with Andrew Denton and Faye Waterman. It's a delightful thought, I have to say. I'd put money on that. I'd pay money to see it. Put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, again, it comes back to the fundamental humanity
Yes.
of who we are and our interactions. And the
Yeah.
more human they are, the better we can relate to each other and understand other human beings. You know, the sad fact that social media has made young people particularly lonelier than they've ever been before, that's a really telling thing, and it's a dangerous thing.
Well, it's actually in one of the top 10 things of the stresses in our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Loneliness. Loneliness can be a killer.
Yeah.
And I heard something about that just recently. You know, when people are lonely, it's a very sad place to be. And you can go into a crowd of people. There can be lots of people around you, and you can know some of those people, and
Yeah.
you can still feel lonely.
Absolutely. In fact, that probably exacerbates it in many ways,
Yes.
like, going to a crowded shopping center or whatever, and that you're surrounded by people, whether you know any of them or not, and you just it's almost like sometimes you see time lapse footage, and it's very clever. Someone's standing in the middle of a crowded place, just standing still, and the time lapse footage of everyone going around them, and your focus is absolutely on the person that's standing still. Stillness is more powerful than movement. And that's it personifies loneliness.
Yes.
It illustrates it better than anything else. It's just, you're not connected with any of those people in the rush and hustle and bustle of daily life, and it's a very sad thing, a very sad thing. But
Mm.
yeah, we can use social or anti-social media for positive things. I mean, we're doing that right now effectively. We're using technology to have this conversation, which is great. So
When you're too bloody far away to sit down in person.
that's right. You're in, Melbourne. God, who wants to live there? The weather's
Oh,
terrible.
excuse me.
I'm in Queensland. The weather's
So
been terrible for months. We've had biblical rains since like November, and
biblical.
yeah, it's just, I expect Noah's Ark to go floating past the main road any day now, which is, it's great to have rain because we're on tank water, but the tanks are full now. It can stop,
Yeah, yeah,
it can go away. I,
yeah.
I can mow the
It's
grass again because it doesn't, the mower doesn't get bogged. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah.
as everything's contextual. So it's
Tell
actually, I was
us.
talking to someone the other day, and they were from Melbourne, but they're in Brisbane, and he was saying he's a craftsman. We were just talking generally, and he said it's really important to get away from Australia every now and again, just to get a perspective and look back at it. And that's so true. I remember, living in the UK for a couple of years and being back since. You appreciate what's here, and
Because we tend to take it for granted.
absolutely, we do. Yeah. I mean, one of the good things about COVID, I suppose, was people were restricted in their travel, but they could go and see stuff they wouldn't bother with normally. Leave that to the overseas tourists. I know people be going out back and long reach or whatever, and seeing things that they've never seen before because they weren't allowed to travel, but beyond the borders.
Yep.
So that's great. That's great, and it's we do take things for granted. We take each other for granted. We take our lives for granted. We take our culture for granted.
Until something happens and it
Until something
stops
happens.
us in our tracks. And
Absolutely.
then we stop to take note and say, where am I? Review what's going on and review where we want to be
Mm,
and how we want to live our lives. So, it's important for us to have, I suppose, those moments of boom,
yeah.
what's going on here?
There's someone I know who's written a book, and I have to. It's got the best title, and I hear it is here. It's an American lady, and the book is called Cosmic Bitch Slap.
Oh, yes, Jennifer.
And Jennifer Seidler. And it arrived in the post the other day. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but what best title for a book, Cosmic Bitch Slap. And I know, because she's described, I know what it's about. And yeah, we every now and again we need a cosmic bitch slap, or we get one whether we need it or not.
Yes.
We think we need it or not, and someone just go bang, okay, wow, let's stop and think about this, as you say, just review what's happening and what has happened, where you're going, why has this happened, this event, terrible event or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's good to be kicked out of the comfort zone from time.
Reminded.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Stepping out of your comfort zone, taking off the blinkers and stepping out of your comfort zone and having a go at something different instead of just going down this focus here. And that's why I do what I do, because I want people to realize there are opportunities out there. You know, there's opportunity. I always say there's opportunities that come along and we either take them and we work with them. If they're not for us, let them go, look what we've learned and take it on to the next thing. But we don't want to end our life saying, if only.
Absolutely. I mean, I was talking the other day to someone about how if I'd stayed a draftsman all those decades ago, I could have made probably reasonable living, house and all that sort of stuff, and made plenty of money and had lots of superannuation. I haven't done that, but the things I've been able to achieve, and this is not bragging, this is just factual stuff, that they're nothing to do with engineering. The things I've been able to achieve are really quite remarkable. And it's the thing of, you do it because you do it at the time, and that's what you're doing at the time. But when you look back, you go, my God, how did I do that? What made me, take that risk? And it's about risk taking. It's about, as you say, getting out of your comfort zone, either being, deciding yourself to do that, or getting the bitch slap and being forced to do that. So we, it's very easy to just take for granted what the things we have achieved, and everyone achieves enormous things.
That's why we're having this conversation. But I want to take you back to your engineering.
Yeah.
What did you learn in engineering that took you to some other place? And that engineering could be quite creative, because you had to be creative in things. So therefore, that engineering is a part of who you are, even though you didn't pursue it.
Indeed, I used to do the most aesthetic engineering drawings of anybody in the office. But when I design sets for either theatre or television, I know, because of my engineering background, I know A, how the set can be built, B, that it'll fit through the stage door, because that's a pretty practical thing, because you'd be amazed how many sets don't fit through stage doors because they haven't thought about it. And you can design something in engineering, design something to last for 20 years. In set design, you might need to last 20 days or 20 weeks, whatever. So, but the engineering, so in fact, that's one of the being an engineering draftsman was one of the reasons I got the job at the BBC, because a lot of people doing the course didn't have that drafting, a technical drawing background. I did, and so I could just I can do those drawings really easily. So that absolutely, it helps to inform those decisions and choices and steps that even other people recognise. Oh yeah, Chris can draw pretty well. Give him a job. Done. You combine that with some artistic or aesthetic sensibilities, and you're working for the BBC in design.
See, engineering wasn't a waste of time.
No. Well, as I say, no experience is ever wasted, and certainly not wasted. Engineering, no, it gave me a great background in a practical approach to the arts as well. A practical, not just design, but a practical approach to artistic expression generally, whether that's physical or sets or music. Indeed, and there are aspects
the
of
acoustics of the set.
Absolutely, yeah. You can walk around a stage and getting a feel for the stage, and yet it's a very practical exercise, because as you clap and see what the acoustics are like. Is the sound bouncing back at me? Do I need a microphone, or can I get away without one because they're artificial sound? So engineering, it's fantastic. I wouldn't want to keep doing it. In fact, I couldn't do it now because it's all computers, and
but you don't have to, because you got from it what you needed.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's informed my entire career in a very positive way. Yeah, absolutely. No experience ever wasted.
Now, I want to ask you, what do you think your superpowers are?
I noticed you said superpowers plural. What I get the most satisfaction out of in applying what you refer to as my superpowers is teaching people, seeing people learn new skills that they weren't aware of, that they needed to develop, or that they've just developed and gone, oh wow, I didn't know I could do that. And that's immensely gratifying. It's immensely appealing. It's kind of like, you know, you can talk to people and teach them stuff, and they go, oh, yeah. But until they absorb it and implement it, until it's implemented, it's only then that the penny drops, and you know, then they've got it. Yep, that's the moment you've got it, because you walked across the stage in a different way, or you held that moment a bit like, yeah, that whatever that is, whatever that detail is. That, and when you see that as the person who has taught them to do that, or has pointed out that they should try that, that's so gratifying. I've done quite a bit of work with a wonderful genius instrument maker and musician by the name of Lindsay Pollock, and I've directed some of his shows and over the years, and he makes instruments out of carrots and pumpkins and wheelbarrows and ladders and ironing boards. He's just a genius, and he makes these, you know, mostly wind instruments out of you know, fold up stools and stuff. And one of the shows I worked with him on, we spent like an hour, 2 hours, I think it was 2 hours, working on just one entrance, just the timing of that one entrance. He was just about going nuts at the end of it, but it worked, and it was a very highly stylized show. But we spent, you know, 1 or 2 hours on just that one moment, and it's those one moments, you stack them up together, and that's what makes a show, a presentation, a video. You stack them up, and that's the package. That's how you package what your message is effectively. And it's the active awareness that you need to apply, that one needs to apply to that creates those moments, and they're so special. And it's what makes a presentation or performance brilliant. You go, oh wow.
What's one tip that you would give the listeners, what they need to understand to come and work with you and to learn and create awareness of who they are?
It's the one thing. It's far more complex than that. Trying to find the one answer. Yeah, the question I've been asked more than any other question over the last 23 years of coaching people in the corporate sector is, quote, what do I do with my hands when I'm presenting? And my answer is always, I don't know what to do with your hands until I see what you do with your hands. And then, well, I'm not going to change what you do, but we'll stylize that so that you still feel comfortable, because you're still doing it more or less the same, and yet it can say enormously different things about your confidence, your communication, your openness to the audience. So, you know, typically I find for that person, and it's absolutely bespoke, for that person, I find their default hand position that they can come back to and go out of, come back to, go out of. Even on camera, you'll find that gesturing is super important. What you do with your hands, even if they're out of frame, how you gesture, how you activate your, not only your body and your face, and your eyes, but your voice, strangely enough. If you don't gesture, your voice goes flat and boring. If you gesture, it keeps the whole body alive, including the voice. So from that one question, what do I do with my hands? Yeah, that's the ripple effect of that is huge, because that helps to inform and give you confidence in terms of what you're saying, how you need to say it, how you need to package it up and express that. So again, it all comes back to that active awareness that I talk about.
Beautiful.
When we're under stress, our bodies revert to safe and familiar and comfortable things. But if we start to analyze that and tweak that and stylize it, not change it, we stylize it, then it makes massive difference, just an absolutely massive difference, literally down to the blink of an eye. It can be that small.
Beautiful.
You know, the speed at which you blink your eyes when you turn your head, that can make a massive difference in how that's interpreted.
Yep, so true, so true. Thanks, Dr. Chris, for coming on and having this brilliant conversation. You've given me so many ideas, and I think when people listen to it, they will really become aware of who they are and what they want to do, and want to have a conversation with you, because you have so much wisdom, so much knowledge that needs to be shared with a lot more people. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's been an absolute delight, Faye. Thank you so much for the invitation to share a conversation. That's what we're doing. We're sharing a conversation. Thank you very much. Delightful.
My pleasure. I'm Faye Waterman, the Conversation Curator. This has been What's Your Superpower? My guest, Dr. Chris Willems. And if you want to get in contact with him, you can see the information down below on the podcast. It's bye from me for now. Bye for now.